There was once a boy named Liam who sat in the very back of his classroom, slouched in his chair with a blank stare and a half-empty notebook. His grades were an unending stream of F's and red-inked remarks. Every quiz was a disaster. Every test was a nightmare. And every parent-teacher conference ended with the same tired words, "He's just not trying." But the truth was, Liam was trying. He just didn't know how. Every morning, he dragged himself to school with a heavy bag and heavier thoughts. Other students whispered behind his back. Some were cruel, mocking him with low voices and high-pitched laughter. Others just ignored him entirely, as though he were invisible. Teachers, exhausted and overwhelmed, often gave up on him without saying it aloud. They didn't ask why he struggled. They just assumed. At home, things weren't much better. His parents argued constantly, sometimes about money, sometimes about him. "He's lazy," his father would snap. "No, he just needs help," his mother would plead. But help never really came. Liam would retreat into his room, close the door, and put on his headphones to drown out the shouting. His walls were covered with posters of athletes, inventors, astronauts, people who had done something great. But to Liam, they were just fantasy, unreachable dreams far away from the constant storm that was his life. Then came the science test. Another F. This one hit harder than usual. It was the 5th test in a row he had failed in the same subject. The teacher handed it back with a tired sigh, saying, "Liam, you have to care at some point." He didn't reply. What could he say? He wanted to care. He wanted to succeed. But every time he tried, it felt like he hit a wall. That night, something broke inside him. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way, but in a quiet, painful collapse. He lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what it meant to keep failing. Maybe they were all right. Maybe he really was dumb. Maybe trying wasn't enough. The next morning, Liam did something he rarely did. He stayed after class. His science teacher, Mr. Reynolds, looked surprised to see him still in the room. Liam didn't speak right away. He just stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Something you need, Liam?" Mr. Reynolds asked, his voice guarded but not unkind. I don't get it," Liam finally said. "Any of it. I try. I read the book. I do the homework. But when the test comes, I just forget everything. I feel stupid." For a long moment, Mr. Reynolds didn't say anything. Then he leaned back in his chair, studying Liam not as a failing student, but as a human being. "You're not stupid," he said slowly. "You just haven't figured out how you learn." That sentence echoed in Liam's head like a bell. You haven't figured out how you learn. He had never thought about learning like that. He assumed it was the same for everyone. Read the book, memorize the facts, pass the test. But what if it wasn't? Mr. Reynolds pulled out a small booklet from his drawer and handed it to Liam. "This is something I give to students who are struggling. It's about different learning styles. Some people need visuals. Others need movement. Some remember better when they teach others. You should try it." Liam took the booklet home and read every page that night. It was the first time he actually wanted to read something from school. And slowly, he began to understand. He wasn't broken. He was just different. He discovered he was a kinesthetic learner. He learned best by doing. That's why sitting in a chair, listening to lectures, and flipping pages never worked for him. He needed movement, interaction, hands-on experience. Suddenly, the fog around him began to clear. The next week, Liam tried something new. Instead of just reading his science notes, he acted them out walking around his room, pretending to be the molecules and atoms the lesson talked about. When studying the solar system, he used balls from his room to represent planets and rotated them around his desk lamp. It was silly, but it worked. He remembered things. Concepts began to stick. Even more surprising, his teachers started to notice. In class, Liam began asking questions. Real questions. Curious questions. His hand slowly rose more often. And while he still struggled with writing his thoughts down, the ideas in his head were suddenly louder than the noise around him. But the change wasn't instant. There were still failures, still bad days. One math quiz came back with a 48%. His heart sank. Hadn't he tried harder this time? Hadn't he studied longer, drawn diagrams, counted with coins? He was about to crumble when he remembered something else. Mr. Reynolds said, "Progress isn't about never failing. It's about what you do after you fail." So instead of sulking, Liam went to his math teacher, Ms. Patel, and asked to go over the mistakes. She smiled genuinely and said, "Of course, Liam. That's the smartest thing you've done all semester." Together, they walked through each problem, and for the first time, Liam saw where he had gone wrong, not because he was incapable, but because he had rushed. He needed to slow down, double-check, and work through problems in a way that made sense to him. At lunch, Liam started spending less time hiding behind his tray and more time asking classmates how they studied. Some shared flashcards, others liked drawing diagrams. A few mentioned YouTube channels that made learning fun. Liam tried them all. That weekend, something happened that changed everything. His mom found an old cardboard box in the garage filled with broken electronics. Liam took them apart, curious, hands-on, completely absorbed. As he opened each gadget, tracing wires and unscrewing panels, he felt something ignite inside him. He wanted to know how things worked. He wanted to build. He began experimenting with small circuits, watching tutorials online, and testing what he learned in real time. What began as a pile of wires and confusion slowly turned into a working light switch model. He proudly brought it to school for the science fair even though it wasn't required. Mr. Reynolds was stunned. "You built this?" he asked, eyes wide. Liam nodded shyly. "I watched a few videos and figured it out." "That's real learning," Mr. Reynolds said with a grin. "You've got something special, Liam. Don't stop." From that day forward, something shifted not just in Liam's mind, but in his spirit. He began to see school not as a place where he failed, but as a place to figure things out. Every subject became a new challenge to unlock using his method, not anyone else's. But of course, not everyone was quick to accept his growth. Even as Liam started turning in better assignments and speaking up in class, there were still those who whispered, "It's a fluke," or "He probably cheated." Some teachers remained skeptical, assuming his streak wouldn't last. And his classmates, especially the ones who used to laugh at him, gave sideways glances every time his hand shot up with an answer. But Liam had changed. The old him would have wilted under the pressure. The new Liam just kept going. One of the biggest turning points came during a group project in history class. The teacher assigned groups randomly, and Liam found himself paired with Ethan, one of the top students, and two others who barely acknowledged him. From the start, Ethan wasn't thrilled. "Let's just make sure everyone actually pulls their weight," he said, glancing at Liam without hiding the judgment. Liam said nothing, but this time, he didn't let the doubts sink in. Instead, he focused on what he could do. The project was about ancient civilizations, and each team had to create a visual presentation, while others wrote scripts and gathered facts. Liam offered to build a 3D model of a Mesopotamian ziggurat using cardboard, glue, and LED lights. At first, they laughed. "Seriously?" Ethan asked. "A model?" Liam didn't argue. He just went home and got to work. Night after night, he shaped, painted, wired, and researched. And when presentation day arrived, their group didn't just stand out, they stole the show. As the lights dimmed and Liam turned on the LEDs in the structure, the room filled with murmurs of awe. Even the teacher was speechless for a moment. Ethan, standing beside him, finally whispered, "Okay, wow, this is actually amazing." That day, Liam felt something he hadn't in years: respect. And not the kind you demand, it was the kind you earn. The project earned them the highest score in the class. But more importantly, it changed how others saw Liam. He wasn't the kid who failed every test anymore. He was the creative thinker, the one who made things, the one who figured it out. Still, the real test was yet to come. Final exams loomed. And even though Liam had improved drastically, he knew that these exams would be the true measure of how far he'd come. His teachers expected him to fail. His parents were hopeful but nervous. And Liam? He was terrified. But fear didn't stop him this time. It fueled him. He built study stations around his room. One corner had flashcards taped to the wall. Another had his laptop open with videos and simulations. He turned vocabulary into mini games. He walked in circles explaining topics aloud to his mirror. He turned complex ideas into drawings, songs, even puzzles. He did it his way. For days, he studied not longer but smarter. He timed himself. He rewarded himself. He took breaks and came back stronger. Most of all, he didn't quit, no matter how tired or overwhelmed he felt. And when the exams came, Liam walked into each classroom with a quiet fire inside him. He read every question twice. He didn't rush. He used tricks he'd learned: keywords, mnemonics, visual memory. He skipped hard questions and came back to them later. And even though doubt crept in at times, he reminded himself, I've got this. I've prepared. I belong here. The results came 2 weeks later. Liam waited until he was alone to open his envelope. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. The first line showed his science score 84. He blinked. The next, math 78. Then, English 88. Social studies 91. Liam dropped the paper. It wasn't just passing. It was winning. Tears welled in his eyes. Not because he had done well, but because he had proven them wrong. And more importantly, he had proven himself wrong. All those nights he believed he wasn't good enough, all those times he wanted to give up, it was all behind him now. When his teachers saw the scores, some couldn't hide their shock. A few actually asked, what changed? And Liam, smiling, simply replied, I finally learned how I learn. Mr. Reynolds beamed when he heard that. Told you, he said, you're not broken. You're just wired differently. You always had it in you. Liam's parents were stunned. His father, for the first time in years, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, I'm proud of you. His mother cried. She had always believed in him, even when the world didn't. But the best part wasn't the grades. It was what came after. Liam began tutoring other students who struggled. He helped them find their learning styles, just like he had discovered his. He encouraged them to try flashcards, drawings, recordings, even silly games. He told them, there's no one way to learn. You just have to find your way. He even gave a short talk in front of the school about learning differences during a student-led assembly. Nervous and shaking, he stood before hundreds of eyes and said, I used to think I was dumb because I failed every test. But I wasn't dumb. I just hadn't been taught the way I understand things. We all learn differently. That doesn't make you less. It makes you human. The applause that followed echoed in his ears for days. Years later, Liam would look back at that first failing test as the beginning, not the end of his story. He would go on to study engineering, where his love for building and problem-solving only grew stronger. He would become someone others looked up to, someone who once failed everything, yet became something. And whenever he saw a struggling student, head down, drowning in frustration, he'd kneel beside them and say, Hey, I've been there. Let me show you something that changed my life. Because sometimes, one discovery can change everything. Sometimes, it's not about being smart. It's about being seen, about being understood. And that one boy who failed every test became a reminder that no student is hopeless. That behind every failing grade is a story waiting to be rewritten. If you've ever felt like giving up because of low grades, remember Liam's story. Maybe it's not that you're failing. Maybe you just haven't found the way you learn best. Keep going. Keep exploring. And when you finally discover what works for you, everything changes. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more motivational stories. And remember, your potential is greater than any grade.